Excellent.
All right.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. We are very excited to share some insights with Tricia Murray. What I do want to just speak to about is Tricia does have over, and I don't want to, put any dates next to this, but 20 years worth of experience in the field. And what she's really passionate about right now is really teaching solo and micro business owners how to get in the driver's seat of their own marketing and to really create coherence and clarity. And so she's going to take the next 20 minutes to walk you through that. If you have any questions, please do type them into the chat box or in the Q&A box. I will bring them up towards the very end of the presentation for a Q&A period with Tricia. But I will leave that now to Tricia, if you can please enlighten us.
Sweet. Thank you, Danny, so much, very much. I've got a lot to get through, so hopefully I don't run over time. I timed myself a few times, so I think we'll be good. So I'm just looking at the list of people who are here to see who I know. Oh, Jan, right on, you made it. Sari, hey, how are you doing? Jane, good to see you. Cheryl, oh, right. And so everybody else I haven't met yet, but that's okay. We'll meet at some point. So here is a little bit of where we're headed today. It's gonna be pretty simple. I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about me, as well as why I feel like this idea of coherence is so important for us solo and micros. And what is coherence? What does that actually mean? And then I'm going to give you an overview of how I've been working with people, and I think it's really beneficial in the sense that it's quite simple. Nothing's ever simplistic, but it's simplified for sure. So who am I? That's me. Hello. And like Danny had talked about, I've been in the marketing game for a little while. And long story short, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in it because I kind of have this love-hate relationship with marketing. I love its potential, but I get really frustrated by how complicated sometimes things are made that don't need to be complicated. And so I have spent the better part of, I would say, 2 years trying to decomplicate marketing, at least from a strategic perspective, for the solos and micros that I tend to work with. To give you a little bit of background, there's some brands that I've been working on over the last 20 years or so. Some of them really small, right? Columbia Valley, some of you may not have even ever heard of that. Others are very notable. And I will tell you that out of all of the brands that I worked with, there's only one that I felt I could ever declare to be coherent. I'm not going to tell you who because I don't want to throw the others under the bus, but it's just to say that, big brands struggle with this idea of clarity and consistency just as much as we solos and micros do. And before I go any further, I got called out the other day by somebody that nobody knows what a micro business is. It is a thing. Statistics Canada refers to it as any business that has less than 4 employees. And so that's typically who I'm working with. I really have a heart for them, in part because I am one, but in part because they are a very large part of our business community. I might even go as far as saying that they are the backbone. So why is this so important? So in my research, what I found was that 51% of us are failing in the first 5 years. And another stat said that 66% of us are choosing to shut things down in 10 years. This number, oh my goodness, it shocked me that it was this high. And then it infuriated me. And then it scared me because I actually didn't want to be another statistic. And so that sent me down the rabbit hole to try and understand why this pink elephant was in the room and why no one was really trying to address it. And I think that people are, but just not maybe as loudly as we could be. So what did I find? I looked at a lot of different sources, from Forbes to official research studies that had been done around business and what they were struggling with. And there were a few things that kept coming up over and over and over again. And the top 3 here on this list were the ones that really kept surfacing every time I kind of dove into the subject. And what I started to see was that these are marketing problems. And actually they're big picture marketing problems. And, there's a lot of reasons why we fail, but these ones just kept coming up over and over again. And I thought, yeah, I could see that in the clients that I was working with, and even for myself to some degree, while I was trying to re-envision what marketing was going to be for me after I left agency life. And so what's really important to me right now is to be able to help you guys start to get clear. If I can find a way to give you like 20 minutes of your day back, we're going to start that right here. So we're going to try and discover whether or not you even need to be on this webinar. And the way we're going to do that is to just by starting to just pause for a moment. And I'd like you to just think about what it is that you feel when you think about marketing. When you think about marketing your business, when you think about the tactics and the activities, the opportunities and the expectations around marketing, what is it that you feel? And you might want to just start to think about a couple of words that might describe what it is that you're feeling. And if you're brave enough, not brave enough, if you're brave, you want to throw them into the chat window, that'd be awesome. But if any of the words that were rolling around your mind started to feel like overwhelm, self-doubt, frustration, some of the people that I have been working with are just annoyed that they have to market themselves. And a lot of them just really feel lost. They don't really know where to start. So like I said, I want to give us a starting point here today. And part of that starting point is to just kind of understand how we feel about marketing and if we feel good about it, then you probably don't need to be on the call, because coherence isn't really what's behind your pain point, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But if some of those words really resonated with you, at least as it relates to marketing in your business, then this conversation is going to be really helpful. And I'm going to contrast those words with another list. And I'm going to get you to pause again for a moment and just consider what it would feel like if you started to feel any one or all of these words as it related to your marketing. The list that you're looking at are the words that people have used to describe how they felt after they started working with some basic concepts to try and create that sense of clarity, right? They felt clearer. They felt like they were able to articulate themselves better. They felt more rational about what they were doing. And some of them have gone on to say that, they felt more confident that, this idea of coherence was something that they would be able to attain. But like most of us, they have been wandering around the wilderness, right? They haven't really known where to go. They've probably watched a university's degree worth of YouTube videos or LinkedIn articles, which are helpful, no question, but it's a lot of time. And so as I started working with people and they were out there in the wilderness, kind of wandering around, there were another couple of things that I kept hearing from them. And they were, number one, that there just was a sense that they didn't need to be strategic as it related to their marketing. We're solos, we're micros, we don't need that. They also felt, quite rightly, that being strategic was going to be an overly complex and abstract process. And the single most common thing I heard was, Tricia, we're not marketers, because I don't work with a lot of marketers. I work with a lot of people who are, photographers. Maybe they may be connected to marketing, but they are not marketers. Not naturopaths and interior designers. They don't have a background in marketing, so the language can be quite overwhelming for them. And so my response to these folks now is a little bit that I believe, from my own personal experience, as well as from the experience of the people I'm working with, that we need to be more strategic. We need it even more because we have limited time, money, and mental bandwidth. And as far as strategy being overwhelming, I start most of my conversations with this idea that strategy, or in my language, coherence, is simply the process of determining what not to do, right? And as far as having someone else drive for you, this is a tough one, because I really do sympathize with the people who feel that marketing is unattainable to them. But no matter, I've got some great people who help me, but at the end of the day, they are looking to me to give them strategic direction about the kind of business that I want to build, the vision that I'm trying to bring forward, the contribution that I'm trying to make through my business. And if I were to hand the keys off to someone to help figure that out, I'd ultimately be living through their interpretation as opposed to my own direct. And that's basically what I kind of help other people understand too. They don't have to do it all. In fact, part of being coherent, I think, is not doing it all, but sitting in the driver's seat, being the one that's giving the provider of, whether you've got a web developer or a designer or a copywriter or whoever working with you, they are looking to you to help navigate the world forward. All right. So how do I go about doing that? To start with, I deal with just the foundational components. I do not teach people how to do better Facebook ads. There's 100 other people who can do that better than I can. I ask people to consider, where does Facebook fit in the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish. So I focus on some core elements, which you're going to see in a moment. I also try, because I'm not working with marketers and I'm not working with people who know the marketing language, to try and make this really accessible to, if you, I might even be a bit of a translator in the sense that I'm taking marketing language and I'm making it into more of a human language. And one of the things that I do is, that sits underneath the framework that you're about to see, is this idea of relationship. So next Friday, I'm doing another webinar through Communo that's going to do a bit of a deep dive into this relationship thing, and just help you kind of get a little bit more clarity around that. But in the long run, this is a little bit what our world looks like when we're thinking about marketing. We are super focused on one part of the canvas. And my job with people is to be able to pull them back so that they can see the entire picture, right? So they can see their big picture. And then, of course, you're going to go back and you're going to look at the certain part of the canvas that you're working on, but only through the lens of knowing what your big picture is meaning to look like. So hopefully that's kind of making some sense for some people. So let's just dive into how I go about doing that, and then we'll get into some questions if there are any. So I have a 5-pronged process that I bring people through, and it starts with understanding the problem. 9 times out of 10, I have people coming to me asking me, what do I do? And I have no other answer, but I don't know because I don't understand the problem. And so to clarify, I help guide people to understand what their problem is, or what the problems are that they're wanting marketing to fix. as opposed to doing what I used to do, which was to actually build the strategy for them. I'm far more in this world of teaching people how to fish so that they can go on and fish for themselves, as opposed to having me do it for them and having them come back to me. And, you know, there's a time and a place for that, depending on where you are in your business. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if your revenues are less than $500,000 a year, hiring someone to do that for you is going to be really difficult financially. And even depending on your business, it could be $1 million in revenue before you get to a place where you can really truly justify having someone acting as a full-time resource for you in that regard. So once you kind of get inside the problem, right? Like, what is it that you want your business to try and do? And so again, full disclaimer, I'm not a business strategist, but a lot of the problems that people come looking for marketing to help with are related to the business, right? What's working? If you've been at this for a little while, you've probably been doing some stuff. So the question then becomes, what's working? What's not working? But casting a bit of a bigger vision. And so we're going to play with this particular piece at the end of the webinar, just so that, you know, some people who came, yes, for the learning, but two, for for the ability to try and, you know, make something happen in their business. I've got something that'll help you start to create a little bit of coherence around the problem. But then I start talking about the brand, and I don't actually use marketing language. I'm using it here because I've got maybe some marketers on here, but I have not yet met a solo or a micro business owner who talks to me about, Tricia, I need you to help me fix my brand. They don't, most of them really get a hold of the language. So what I've said to them is that, you know what, it's actually not even about the brand. In my opinion, it's about the power behind what the brand stands for, or what it evokes in the consumer's mind. So I just take them right there and help them start thinking about what kind of power do you bring to your business that really nobody else can, because they're not you. And then we move into their people. So understanding, you know, again, conventional marketing talks about target audiences and avatars and personas. And in the context of how I speak with my people, they are my people, right? They are human beings. And that's probably one of the frustrations that I've always had with marketing, is that we lose sight of the fact that we are working and transacting with human beings and people. So we dive into trying to understand, what do they look like? What are the actions that they're taking or we want them to take? And what kind of attributes do they have? But it becomes a really human conversation. And then I change things up, and we get talking about the playing field. So conventional marketing will refer to this as your competitive landscape or your competitive set. And I have now absolutely firmly come to this conviction, both, again, in my own personal world and my business and the people that I'm working with, that if you get really clear on your power, and then you get really clear on your people, when you start looking at the playing field and understanding the position that you play, you'll start to see that you have far more teammates than you do opponents. And so that's the whole goal of the playing field, is to try and start to understand, you know, what is it? Where do I sit? Instead of comparing yourself to every other quarterback in the league, you start to see that you're one of many people trying to solve a problem, or a series of problems for a particular type of customer. And then we can talk about pathways. So the question that most people want to start with is, what do I do? I ask them to take a couple of steps back and set a bit of a foundation for being able to start looking at, well, what do you want the pathways to be able to do for you? And so at the very beginning, I was talking about this idea of relationship, and I'm going to show you, like, it's not just about these 5 components, but it's these 5 components in the context of building a relationship with the people that you're in business with. So the pathways are intended to be able to look at it from what do you need to do to initiate the relationship, to cultivate it, to nurture it along, and then to amplify it. So it kind of wraps around the 5 components, but it also sits underneath a lot of the things that I ask people to think about. So we're getting ready to have some questions. If you have some, maybe want to start formulating those. But in the meantime, I'm going to take you into, I frame everything in terms of missions, right? So your mission, should you choose to accept it. I have, again, never had a solo or a micro business owner come to me and say, Tricia, I need help with my brand differentiation. They just don't use that language. And so if you're kind of in that place where you're on this call really and truly because you've got a business and you're struggling to try and figure out how to use marketing more effectively, I'm going to ask you not to think about whether or not it's a consumer insights problem or a value proposition problem. I'm not going to ask you that. I am going to ask you that if you spend the next week just considering what pain points you're feeling. So just like when you get a pain in your body, right? You got knee pain, you can feel it there. You might not know what the specific problem is, but for right now, I just want you thinking about what are you feeling that feels like pain to you in your business, and specifically the pains in your business that you believe are either being caused by or fixed with marketing. And that's going to be, maybe it might be a long list, it might be a short list. But then once you get your list, then you're going to give it a pain rating. So a pain rating of 1 is something that, yeah, it bothers me, but I can live with it. 5 is I can't function for much longer if I don't get this figured out. So your end goal is to try and get to 6 of the most intense pain points that you believe are being caused by or can be fixed with marketing. So here's what one of my clients' body maps look like. And if you saw at the beginning, I had trained as a yoga therapist for a few years. So I see this world of marketing and business pain in a very similar context to the way that I used to see people come in and need help to fix their body. So that's where the body map comes from. But I had a client and she was very clear that her pain was because she either needed more or different customers. She didn't know the difference at the time, and she wasn't sure what the specific issue was around the customer. But it also came to the fore that she just didn't know where to start, right? So those were her 2 big pain points. But it gave her a sense of clarity. Seeing these things down on paper really just helps clarify what the problem is so that we can move on. So there you go. So that's next week, the relationship part. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about me, you can hit my website or reach out to me by email. Send me an email. We can talk about your body map if that is where you're at. But in the meantime, I am at the 5-minute mark, and I just want to open it up to any questions that you guys might have.
Awesome. Thank you, Tricia. As people collect their thoughts and digest the questions you've asked them and possibly have some questions to give them clarity on the little homework assignment you've given them, I do want to say thank you for sharing your process. I think helping us understand how you walk through this journey lets everyone realize the value of taking the time to, like you had basically indicated, ask certain questions and look at their situation in a way that allows them to see themselves differently and possibly identify, like you said, those pain points or what they think marketing can help, or where they're hurting. So thank you. It was really great for me to go through and see that.
Awesome.
If anybody does have any questions, please do type into the chat box. I do know, though, like the questions you're asking, Tricia, are quite deep. They're not necessarily ones that quickly say, oh yeah, well, this means I have a question about that. So it is really valuable if you take the time to formulate any questions you have and then reach out to Tricia just to bounce off challenges you might have in identifying them. But they are really great ways to begin to differentiate. I do want to say, I do have the pleasure of actually vetting every single member in the community right now. And until we grow, that is just my job. We'll have many more people doing it. But what I do get to see very often is that we have a community that is so talented and extremely experienced and successful in helping others differentiate, in helping others market who they are. But when it comes to yourself, there's a lot more struggles. And I think it's because we're so close to it. And I think it's because it is something that we're very passionate about and that we care very deeply for. And it's not just something we can put into a sentence. And that's what your clients have as an issue. And that's what you help them do. That's what that skill is. But there's value in taking a step back and asking that of yourself, because I see it. I see it more often than not. And I know in my own life, when I had to change my identity, I struggled with saying, now, who am I? And why am I this way? And who should listen? Because it is hard when you look into yourself. So it's great questions that you're having everybody ask. I hope everyone takes the time to really digest and answer it. And if you kind of knew it from the beginning and reinforced it, great. But if at all you were surprised or struggling, that's a sign that, you know, have a conversation with Tricia a little bit further and explore and probe into where could you possibly spend more time to get more clarity and coherence. Awesome. Okay, well, I do want to thank everybody for joining. We will be sending out the link for Tricia's next session by the end of the day today or early tomorrow morning. So do watch for that in your email and Slack. But thank you so much for joining, and have a great weekend, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you, Tricia.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Tricia, if you'd like to hang on.